What's up, everybody? Pepper in here, bringing you another Attack on Titan, where we discuss Attack on Titan. This week, we're looking at episode 68, season 4, episode 9, Brave Volunteers. This was kind of a wind down episode compared to a lot of the really intense action we've got in the last few weeks. The Paradisians have kind of escaped back. They made it back home, and Armin is talking to somebody who we can't see in the opening of the episode. Kind of seemingly maybe expressing some regret about the way that things have turned out, and that if 3 years prior, if they could have maybe been more proactive about talking things out, maybe if things could have been different. And we get to see kind of the way that Paradis was able to pull off this kind of an operation here, and exactly whose help they enlisted. So we know that at this point, we knew from last week that some people from Marley had defected. We just didn't know quite the extent of it, if everybody that helped were willing participants or not. And the answer to that's it's a little bit of a mix. So we see a scout ship pull up to shore. Everybody has set up a trap, basically capturing scout ships, sending out distress signals, getting more ships to come and try to help them, and then basically taking the crew captive and telling them, like, you can either help us or you can be prisoners, or you're free to swim. You're free to leave the island. You just can't leave on a boat. I hope you're good at swimming. And so this is a pretty interesting way to kind of make up for their lack in terms of their ability to compete with other countries, especially even Marley, on a technological scale. I mentioned before how dramatic and drastic their improvements to their technology, their ODM gear, to their guns and stuff like that was. And so it turns out Marley and engineers basically helps them with that, helps them create a port, help them basically modernize in a really rapid pace. And on top of people that they coerced through threats and through basically making them prisoners, there were people that volunteered before there were even any terms brought up, before anything else. Like Onion Capone, for example, the pilot of the blimp that we saw, as well as Yelena, who was the follower of Zeke that Peak pointed out last week. And so basically they were already on board with Zeke's plan. They already seemed to be pretty aware of it. And basically what Zeke's plan amounted to, which he sent out in a letter to Paradis, he snuck them a letter basically saying that he's actually on their side, that he's part of or rather the leader of a movement to try and claim Eldian independence, which he kind of referred to last episode, get them out from under Marley's heel and be a completely independent state. And that part of his plan for how he was going to do that was what he needed was the founding Titan, and then also a Titan with royal blood. Aaron's got the founding Titan. Zeke is a Titan with royal blood. And at first, everybody's super skeptical because this guy was just trying to kill them. He basically single-handedly wiped out the scouts for the most part. So, healthy dose of skepticism there. And a bunch of generals are debating. Some don't even want to hear out what he has to say in his letter and just want to hang every single person that's defected from Marley, even the ones that were enthusiastic about helping. And Pixis kind of reins them in and, says we should at least hear out what he has to say before we do something like that. And it's kind of great. I feel like Pixis is one of those characters that we just don't see enough of. I really like him. I think he's a great leader. He's a great military person. He brings a really level head to any conversation he's in. And he's just really entertaining to watch a lot of the time. And so they kind of get through. And Zeke also says he's not revealing the full details of his plan, until some of his conditions are met. And Aaron kind of, because everybody thinks that's super shady and they're even more skeptical. And Aaron points out that no, the fact that he needs a founding titan and one with royal blood makes sense because the way that he was able to control the Titans, the last time he was able to do that was, of course, when he made contact with Dina Fritz, his stepmother, I guess that's what you want to call her, his dad's other wife, and that was what temporarily let him command the other Titans. And so he puts together in his head that Zeke must have figured out a way to override the peace agreement that King Fritz installs in every royal-blooded founding Titan successor. And then from there, he puts together, well, Zeke must mean that he wants to activate the rumbling. That would overwhelm the rest of the world, and that would bring Eldian's true independence because there'd physically be nobody left to challenge them. And he knows the entire world's against them. He just saw the declaration of war when they attacked. So he knows that they don't actually have that many allies, if any, abroad. And so this is kind of an interesting turn of events. This explains Aaron's hopelessness, the hopeless look in his eyes that he always seems to have now, because he's resolved basically to destroy the world, and he feels like the rumbling is absolutely necessary at this point. Now it seems like they have, unless there's something else that they need that hasn't been explained yet, seems like they have all the pieces in place to make that happen. They've successfully retrieved Zeke. And so I think right now, because they've arrested Aaron and they have him tied up, I think right now the debate, and I think what they're heading towards and what was peaked at the next episode, or teased, I mean, was that now the conversation needs to happen whether Paradis supports the rumbling or not, because you're talking about almost wiping out humanity for real. You know, they thought they were the only humans on Earth. Anybody that's within the walls is the last of humanity forever. They find out there's a whole world, billions of people out there, and now they're having to contemplate ending that world because of the threat posed to them by the world, because everybody's so scared of what they're going to do. And so it's really interesting how these people who probably never would have considered something like that before were kind of pushed into considering it. In other words, the world was so scared of something like this happening, it kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy of where, like they might actually legitimately have to do this because everybody's preemptively trying to kill them before they have the chance. And I just think that's just crazy how Marley has kind of pushed the issue to the point where now they can't really go back. They couldn't go back before, but now they really can't, because they just massacred a bunch of world leaders and a bunch of civilians, a bunch of innocent people. They basically demonstrated to the world that, yeah, we're exactly the devils that you made us out to be, and you kind of made us this way. And so, really interesting turn of events there. I think that has a potential to be Game of Thrones level, when the show was good, level of dialogue there, because there's a huge moral conundrum there, of what do you do in that situation. This small minority that's been oppressed to the point where they were actually locked behind a wall, behind a series of walls, and had their memories wiped. Didn't even know the rest of the world existed, and then found out that they all want him dead, and now feels like they might have to destroy the world in order just to live and just to survive. And Armin raises that point that to Aaron, that if they follow through with this, they're exactly the devils that everybody claimed that they always were. That they're devils even for considering it. And I feel like they're teasing some sort of conflict between Aaron and Armin, because Armin's kind of the de facto leader of the Scouts now. He's kind of, for all intents and purposes, taken Erwin's place. I know Hanji is officially the commander of the Scouts, but it really seems like Armin's taken the reins here. And He's the one who came up with the whole plan for the operation for Paradis. He's the one who kind of strung all of that stuff together in tandem with Zeke and Aaron. But he also mentions that he felt like he understood Aaron more than anybody, even Mikasa. Now he's not so sure because of the way that Aaron's acted, because of just the kind of person that Aaron has become, that he's felt like he's needed to become. And so, you get a little bit of introspection there. But I think that the scenes, a good chunk of the episode, the majority of the episode, focuses on exactly how they worked with the Marleyan defectors, the volunteers as they call them. Onion Capone and Yelena are obviously kind of the leaders of this group up until Zeke arrives, and are kind of on board with anything that Paradis wants to do. I mean, they're doing everything they can to help. They get a character, I believe his name's Nikola, to be able to cook for them, and you get to see kind of the overall Marleyan, volunteer versus Paradis. You get to see the state of their relations with each other through Nicola. He's one of the first people captured and is used to lure one of the first scout ships that comes over, that has Yelena and Onion Capone on it, and he's absolutely an unwilling participant. He even says at sword point by Levi to disregard him and just shoot these devils, which they try to do, but Sasha, snipes the lead officer that tries to initiate that, and then half the officers on the deck draw their guns on each other. That's when Yelena and Onion Capone are kind of like, okay, we're gonna take control of the situation and we're gonna defect. And so, some of them were willing from the start, some of them were made into prisoners and kind of grew to recognize Eldians as actual people over time. Nicola, when he's making the food for them at first, he is just disgusted by them. He doesn't even want to look at them. But he's preparing seafood, which they've never had before. And that's just a crazy thing that I never really fully thought about. It just never even crossed my mind that the entire time that the Eldians of Paradis were inside the walls, they never had seafood. And why would they? They didn't even know what the ocean was like. As far as they knew, the existence of the ocean was a rumor. A lot of people didn't even think it was a real thing. And so, of course, they wouldn't have seafood. There's just nobody to catch that for them. So, they... Sasha gets to eat lobster for the first time, and she just starts devouring it. And at first, Nikola is really off-put by it. He just thinks that's just the most disgusting thing he's ever seen. But he sees Sasha crying tears of joy because it's so delicious, and she's never had anything like it before. And then that kind of elicits a sympathetic response from him, like, oh, wow, these people have never had seafood, just something he took completely for granted. And he sees how grateful she is for the food on top of it, of how grateful she is for how good the food was. And that's kind of the first moment where his kind of prejudice against the Eldians starts to break down a little bit. It doesn't happen right away, but you get to see it gradually over time. His opinion of them and their opinion of him both improve kind of in tandem with each other. And you get to see him later crying at Sasha's grave. He's being harassed and heckled by some of the Eldian officers that we see in the beginning, who just are still not on board with the idea of working with Marleyans, given how much Marleyans hate them and view them as devils. And they're basically just as prejudiced as the Marleyans are. Jean and Connie kind of get them away from him and kind of let him grieve in peace. And he just can't believe that she's gone and the way that she died. A kid snuck on board and then shot her. And they clarified that this was a warrior candidate, which of course Nikola would know about, probably knows who they are by name. And so that kind of explains the situation to him a little bit better, helps him grapple with it. Then Sasha's parents show up to visit her grave, and um, he kind of tells them, "Hey, look, I made food for her all the time. There was nobody's food that she liked more than mine." And he offered to make food for them whenever they wanted. And, her dad asks on the house, right? And he says, of course. And then they all kind of cry together. They mourn together. It's a really, really touching moment between all these characters. And Nicola was just introduced in that episode, and they really built him up as a really complex character with this whole arc in one episode, while they're also dealing with the politics, the political intrigue, and everything. Just really well done how they juggled everything together. But towards the end of the episode, we get to see who Armin was talking to, and he kind of says, he follows up with what he said earlier of, maybe things could have been different, but seeing how the whole world had gathered to declare war on Paradis just as Eren attacked, like how I pointed out last week, he kind of came to the same conclusion that I did, that no matter what they did, they were probably going to be attacked, and that there's just no way around that. And so Armin has some, I wouldn't say regrets about what happened, because he kind of reaffirms that no matter what, this kind of needed to happen for them to still exist. But he does kind of regret the fact that it had to get to that point, and that they weren't able to find a diplomatic way about this. They weren't able to find a way to show the world that Eldians could be good people, and that they could be peaceful, and only kind of ended up reinforcing the stereotypes about them. And so you get to see who he was talking to, though, and it's Annie, but she's still in her crystal form, so he's not talking to Annie. He's like talking at Annie, asking her to wake up, and so it's kind of interesting that out of everybody that Armin could be having a conversation with, that it's somebody who might not even be able to hear what he's saying, and that she was kind of a main antagonist of the first season. So, but it makes sense, and I'm kind of interested to see Annie's role in this, if any. She really didn't seem on board with the whole invasion of Paradise. She wanted to give up at the very first sign of trouble. When Marcel died, she wanted to just pack it up and go home. She seems like a very, very self-interested person, so I could see either way. I could see her helping Paradise. I could also see her kind of pretending to help, but then backstabbing them. I mean, I could see her just completely disregarding the thing into the war entirely and just doing her own thing. So Annie, I think at this point, is one of the most interesting. She's inanimate right now, but she's, just because of the potential of what they could do with her character. I'm kind of excited to see what happens with her if she's back in the fold. But yeah, and I do think that because of the way that Eren understands, or believes he understands, what Zeke's plan is, that makes sense as to why he ate the Warhammer Titan. He probably wants to eat all the other Titans, one, so that nobody can stop the rumbling, but two, if I'm remembering correctly, in season 3, when a lot of the lore around Ymir and how the Titans formed, if I'm remembering that correctly, I'm pretty sure Ymir, when it was just her, wielded just godlike abilities, and I'm wondering if maybe Eren feels like he could get those abilities, because I don't think they've ever had all the Titans in one, all the powers in one person since Ymir, since different people ate different parts of her body. I think it's just always been this way, that these are the Titan powers, this is how many of them there are. I don't know if anybody's ever tried having multiple powers at once, let alone having all of them. And, it kind of makes sense from a military standpoint. You wouldn't want one person to basically be God if you're trying to use them as weapons. And, because they're already hard to keep a leash on as it is. If you don't do a good enough job propagandizing somebody, you don't hold enough things over their head. If they don't have enough of an incentive, there's nothing really stopping them from turning on you and doing it basically a coup and overthrowing you. So that's probably why the main reason why nobody ever tried it before. But it could also just be that so few people really understood the powers in the first place that they never really thought of it that way to try and combine them again. But that would be really interesting. And I wonder if that's a way to get around the peace, court. If you have the founding titan, but all the other ones, I'm just really curious to see where Aaron's going with this. Kind of seems like he's the bad guy now, trying to destroy the world, and so because of that, I kind of have to, all those characters that I like, kind of have to root for them if they're going that route of going up against Aaron. For the time being, Aaron and Zeke are separated. Levi took Zeke to the middle of this giant wooded area. Because the Beast Titan's like a giant ape, he basically said, I can't think of a better hotel for you, a better place for you to stay. And just his dynamic with Zeke right now is just hilarious to me because of the fact that they both want to kill each other so badly. Mostly Levi, I think, at this point. But just their Levi's cracks every opportunity he gets. There's a point where they're sitting in the carriage and Zeke just point blank asks him, "Can you stop glaring at me?" So I did think that was kind of funny. I do hope that they pay that off somehow, some way. But even if they don't, I think it's okay at this point. We know that Levi has him kind of outclassed. So we know how a genuine fight with them is likely to go. But still, I think Levi, if Zeke's gonna die, I think Levi should be the one to kill him to fulfill his promise to Erwin. Thematically, that just makes a lot of sense. But this is the kind of show where that stuff like that doesn't always happen for the convenience of the plot or the narrative. Sometimes it really does feel like the author is really trying to put a realistic spin of like what would actual people do in these situations. Is it realistic that all these people would survive? No. So that's why Sasha had to die. But yeah, just overall, I'm really enjoying the season. Really liking the direction that they're taking everything. Kind of weird that Aaron goes from being stereotypical shonen protagonist to super villain in the span of a season, really in the span of a couple of episodes. But they've handled it really well. They've explained it really well, and yeah, it's been wild so far. Anyways, that's about it. If you excuse me, if you like this video, remember to give it a like, leave it a comment. Let me know if there's any theories you want me to discuss, any other anime you want me to cover. I post every single day, and yeah, that's about it. See you guys.